The United States is still a land of subjects and citizens. I mean, it's more subtle, of course, but the basic structure is still the same. White Americans, unless you are poor or disabled, enjoy the full benefits of citizenship. You can generally vote without impediment, as long as you're not a woke student who prefers the convenience of a drop box. Your family has never faced violent reprisals for trying to go to school or to work. You can live wherever you want without fear of reprisal, rejection, redlining, artificially reduced property values, or your neighbors calling 911 because they don't believe you live there. Historically, America's citizens have felt free to lynch, to riot numerous times from Reconstruction through the 1930s, all the way up to January 6, 2021. They have felt entitled to overthrow the government when they don't like the outcome of an election. As a citizen, the police generally serve and protect you, your property, and your social comfort. Citizens feel free to scream at the police when they're pulled over, or even to swing their fists at them. They get fed by the police after they gun down a church full of worshipers. They calmly surrender after committing a massacre. But those in this country who are still treated as subjects, Black folks, regardless of wealth or status, brown folks, AAPI Americans, poor white folks, non-white immigrants, and others who live at the margins of citizenship, live with the constant risk of housing and job discrimination based on your race, your social status, your hairstyle, or your last name. Higher interest rates and inadequate services in the zip codes you somehow always seem to get routed to. You might face discrimination at the airport and extra surveillance based on the outward manifestation of your religion. And then there is the often rude, dismissive, cruel, and too often brutal and sometimes deadly policing, which again was designed to control you and keep you socially confined to a status of inferiority and fear, regardless of how fervently you comply, how high you raise your hands, or how much you scream or beg or cry out for your mom. And it literally doesn't matter whether the police officer is white or looks like you, grew up like you, or could, without that uniform on, be you. It's not the race of the officer, it's the design of the system. Again, occasionally, some of the slave catchers were Black. Subjects endure the media and the National Guard, assuming they're in a riot at any moment, even though the cops who did the killing were arrested and charged. And even though it's the police who tend to break up Black vigils with tear gas and batons, not the other way around. Subjects face disapproving questions about what they did to cause their own death. Subjects fear for their children every day of their lives, even when by the grace of God they make it to adulthood, because they understand that at any day or time, they could meet up with the wrong cop on the wrong day and become the next hashtag. And subjects often turn their despair on each other or on their own communities. Those are the two Americas. And now you understand why the right doesn't want your kids to know this country's actual history, or for you to know it, because they fear that if you knew, you might want to do something about it. In fact, you might even demand it.
To be in. I have more in common with a Black scholar than I have with a white man who's against scholarship. And you have more in common with a white author than you have with someone who's against all literature. So why must we always concentrate on color or religion or this? There are other ways of connecting men.
I'll tell you this. When I left this country for one reason only, one reason. I didn't care where I went. I might have gone to Hong Kong, I might have gone to Timbuktu, I ended up in Paris, on the streets of Paris, with $40 in my pocket on the theory that nothing worse could happen to me there than it already happened to me here. I don't know what those white people in this country feel, but I can only include what they feel from the state of their institutions. I don't know if white Christians hate Negroes or not, but I know that we have a Christian church which is white and a Christian church which is Black. That's just a great deal for me about a Christian nation. It means that I can't afford to trust most white Christians and certainly cannot trust the Christian church. I don't know whether the labor unions and their bosses really hate me. That doesn't matter, but I know I'm not in their unions. I don't know if the real estate lobby is anything against Black people, but I know the real estate lobbies keep me in the ghetto. I don't know if the Board of Education hates Black people, but I know the textbooks they give my children to read and the schools that we have to go to. Now, this is the evidence. You want me to make an act of faith, risking myself, my wife, my woman, my sister, my children, on some idealism which you assure me exists in America, which I have never seen.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right.
We are oppressed. We are exploited. We are downtrodden. We are denied not only civil rights, but even human rights. So the only way we're going to get some of this oppression and exploitation away from us or aside from us is come together against the common enemy. Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate? You should ask yourself, who taught you to hate being what God gave you?
I turned around quickly, and the next thing I saw was Malcolm falling back in a dead faint.
And I saw people crawling on the floor. And so I got down too. Then when I was looking out, I saw someone look in amazement to the front. I knew they had shot my husband.
Dan Rather reporting for CBS News from New York. The Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was shot to death by an assassin late today as he stood on a balcony in Memphis, Tennessee.
3 weeks later, a gunman shoots him in the back. As a World War II veteran, Evers is buried with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery.
French, British, Italian, Japanese television. People everywhere are starting to listen to him. It's embarrassing.
Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead.